set of friends who are sober, because if you are with your set of friends who continue to use, it is very difficult to resist the cravings. And this is where we also see the principle that I talked about, which is that the more you resist, the more your brain learns, hey, I need to induce very strong cravings. I need to punish this person for depriving this of me. So what we tend to see, literally what I see in my patients, is that the more that they resist cravings, the more intense the cravings become. And then we can...
Okay, so I see exactly what he's saying is you're already screwed if you get the craving, because then you have to resist it or just give into it. So that aligns perfectly with what James Clear says in Atomic Habits. He says, if you can remove the cue and not even get the craving, then you already won the battle. And so many people, it's like, well, how do I not get cued? How do I not get triggered? Because porn is everywhere, right? Even sometimes on YouTube, like you'll have an ad over here and it'll just be like a girl wearing nothing, almost nothing. And so that's the cue, and then you get the craving. And so it's almost impossible not to get cued nowadays. I mean, you can put porn blockers on your phone, on your computer, but at the same time, what he's talking about is that if you get triggered, if you get a cue, as long as you're around the same or the right environment or the right social group, then you're not going to get that same level of craving, right? So you might get a little bit cued, but you're not going to be able to do it because you're with your friends, because you're distracting yourself, which is this idea that, you can distract yourself away. And it's basically like replacement, right? So I wonder if he's going to talk about how, you have the craving. Are you going to replace that? Are you going to fulfill that craving, that emotional craving, with something else? Because if you're not going to resist it, if you're going to replace it, it's kind of like you're feeling hungry for some junk food. Well, instead of resisting the hunger, you just eat something healthy, right? So I find that that's a really healthy way to go about it, right? Apart from even just reprogramming your brain, right? So a lot of people, they don't think about it this way. They don't think about it how your interpretation of the activity of watching porn actually influences whether or not you watch it. Okay, so you can reprogram pain or pleasure associated with it, right? So that's a beginning stage. But let's say you already understand that there's going to be pain associated with it. You already know that you're going to be less energized. You already know that you're going to get a little bit more tired. Your brain, the confirmation bias, overrides you, and you say, oh, it's no big deal, it's not wrong, it's just a little bit, I'm not going to actually ejaculate. You start hearing all these lies in your head and says, I'm just going to take a peek, just a minute, and it's basically tricking you. I'm not going to ejaculate, it's not going to make me tired even if I do, I earned this. You hear all these convincing stories, and so if you're not prepared for that, you're going to get sucked in right away, even if you have associated some pain with the porn instead of only pleasure, right? Because that's what determines your action. The cue, the craving, the action, and the reward, right? So if you can change your perception that it's going to be painful, that's going to be difficult to engage in, this is habit science. This is how you actually start making it tougher to actually engage in bad habits, right? So it's hard to not get cued. It's hard to make it difficult to watch unless if you put barriers in your way. Like you literally put porn blockers on. You're always with friends. These are barriers. It makes it harder to engage in it. But everybody knows anytime you go into the bathroom, you can just take out your phone and watch videos. Who doesn't do that? So you have to have barriers in place. Like what actually helped me was I would put a porn blocker on, and even though you can turn it off, it still takes like a minute or two. And you'll be surprised how much a minute or two actually deters you from doing it. You will be shocked. It is shocking how much it deters you. It's actually really annoying. And I highly recommend it. I highly recommend putting up as many barriers as you can in your way, because that prevents all the smaller voices of saying, just take a peek, it's not a big deal. It prevents, I'd say, a good 50 to like 80% of temptations to actually just open it up and start. So that's a huge step It's just putting little barriers in the way. And then you have to figure out activities to substitute so that you can replace that craving and fulfill it in a different way. Some people like to do push-ups. Some people like to do a Tabata workout. You put 4 minutes on. The main idea is that you find some other distraction, something else to do that will satisfy that same craving. And you have to just cleanse it from your mind. It's in the system. The hormones are in the system once you're triggered. It'll settle down. It's kind of like you agitate the water and it's still going to be spinning even when you stop agitating it. But you just wait. Eventually it slows down, and eventually it stops. It feels like it's not going to stop, but it will stop. You just have to remove the stimulus, go distract yourself, generate a different form of energy that will put into motion different physiological mind-body systems. Then your focus is somewhere else, your body's in a different mode. So you have to understand how to change modes, how to change states. When there's all these chemicals flooding in your body already, hopefully not too many, based on how much you got triggered, it's going to be so much harder to actually change it if you got a big trigger and all these chemicals are running through your body. But you still have to know how to change states quick, and you have to be weary, because if you get sucked in too much by the trigger, then there's no return. There is a point of no return. If you let yourself even watch just a little bit, you'll reach that point of no return. Everybody knows that this concept of point of no return. You have to stay 10 steps away from the line. If you know where the line is, your point of no return, don't ever let yourself go even 10 steps towards it. Once you get that close to it, you're done. So there's actually 2 points of no return. They say you shouldn't even pitch your tent near Sodom and Gomorrah. It's just a archetypal way of saying, not only are you not supposed to go into the evil city, you're not even supposed to pitch your tent in sight of it. Because why? Because you're going to see the people walking to the city, you're going to see things happening going towards the city, and it's almost the same thing as the city, and you're going to get tempted. You still get minor stimulus when you're even outside the city. So you have to pitch your tent miles away. The second I see ads like that, I put my hand over it and I cancel it. I don't even let my mind wander there because I know where it will lead and I know where that road leads. And if you really play it out in your mind, you know where it leads. And you know every single step. It's like it deceived you so many times that if you even listen to one of its lies, like I'm just going to look for a little bit, I'm just going to scroll Instagram, or I'm just going to let myself look at a little bit of TikTok videos like sexy dancing. It's not porn, but you let yourself look, you let yourself think, you let yourself indulge a little bit, all of a sudden you're already in Sodom and Gomorrah. You're already there. So resisting isn't really that effective. You have to know how to change states. You have to know what your limitation is. You have to stay far away from that hormonal sweep that'll come into you and take control over you. So it's not literally resisting. You're literally just doing something else to change your state. You have to know how to change your state. And it has to be powerful because the sexual impulse is powerful. So examples of how to change your state. Like I said, getting out in nature, getting socially involved, that changes your brain so fast. Changing what your body and mind is doing. You can switch instantly into something that engages your focus very strongly. Learning a language, you have to focus. Solving something with your mind. Reading a book. Change your environment. Go out and start doing something intense with your body. Taking a cold shower. Getting down and doing 30 burpees until your arms feel like they're going to fall off. Or doing 100 squats until it burns in your legs. That changes your physiology. All these things are literally changing your chemicals. And so you can't stay in the same state because when you're in that horny state, it's rest and digest. So if you instantly stimulate yourself into fight or flight, you will get out of that. It will pop you out of it. So if you start doing some sprints, if you go and work out right then and there, you'll probably have a good workout. Okay? So you have to change your brain state, change your body state. It's pretty advanced to be able to just sit there and feel it and let it pass. That's such a strong emotion. Most people won't be able to do that. I've tried that. Some people say you just sit there with it, you feel it, you don't resist it, and eventually you just watch it and it'll go. Well, that's really hard because a lot of the time you'll just stand back up and go back to it. It won't work. So I highly recommend that you have a list of different things that you can do in different situations so that when you get triggered, you can change states. I also recommend that you get an accountability partner that you will tell, and you make an agreement that you will tell whenever you take a look at it. That's another deterrent. That's another boundary. That's another step of integrity that will help you. And it adds a little bit more pain to the other side. So you associate even more pain with the behavior. It's all about associations of pain and pleasure, right? And then once you start resisting little by little, you'll associate that with pleasure. Why? Because you use that hour to read a book and you associate that with money, success, promotion, success with women, success in your career, more happiness, just the love of knowledge itself, a sharper brain, right? So you start associating overcoming these little temptations and these little triggers with pleasure. So it's not so much that you have to resist, because it's not about resisting, it's about changing your states. Let's see what else he has to say.
To look at the medications for addictions, things like naltrexone or buprenorphine in the case of opioid addiction, and literally what is the result of these medications?
Let's skip to pick your battles. Better not be another ad.
So instead of just randomly resisting the craving and then ultimately giving into it, which will intensify the craving the next time you step into the ring, what we really want to do is almost schedule our pornography use. So one of the things that I'll do with my patients is sort of pick 2 times throughout the day where they are allowed to watch pornography. This has a very interesting effect. The first is that outside of those windows,
this is different.
It becomes easier to resist. But even then, they're resisting a little bit. It becomes easier to win the battle of pushing the pornography until 11 a.m. and 6 p.m., let's say. At 8 or 9 in the morning, you get this little impulse and you kind of push it till 11 a.m. So you're actually strengthening and training your frontal lobe. And then when 11 a.m. rolls around, you can sort of engage in it. So this is really interesting because we can't do this with a substance use disorder.
So it's interesting what he's saying, because the way that I would say and the way that I approached it to have success in this area is that I would let myself do it, but I do less of it, right? So it's like cutting your dose. It's kind of like if you drink 2 liters of Pepsi a day, you cut it down to 1. You're making progress, right? So people think they fell off the bandwagon or they have like this guilt or shame. Well, the way that I saw it was, well, I'm doing it less often with less volume, and so I'm making progress and you can feel good. So it's not like you're just going cold turkey. It's not like you lost if you watch a little bit of it. And especially if you can watch and not ejaculate, because then you're preserving a lot of physical energy. So there's a lot of different steps that you can take to just decrease the harmfulness that it's doing to you. Like he's saying, you don't have to stigmatize it. You don't have to be perfect. If you actually schedule it, that's actually an interesting approach. It helps you build the resistance muscles to wait until you actually get there. Kind of like if you say, I'm only going to eat at noon and then 5 o'clock. It kind of trains you that, like, you can resist those cravings. I think it's the important thing to do.
Why is that? Because in a substance use disorder, we have certain genetic modifications usually to things like our GABA receptors, our mu receptors, which mean that if I have a little bit of alcohol at 11 a.m., the rest of my day is shot. Thankfully, the pattern that I tend to see in behavioral addictions is that moderation is more...
Your workflow is important to us.
Moderation is more lenient.
You have... accessible. It's more doable. Like, so with someone like an alcohol addict, you can't really do that. If they have one drink, they can't stop. With pornography addicts, I'm able to see more success in this way. So I know it sounds really bizarre, but just setting aside a particular time where you're allowed to watch pornography. The second thing is to generally remember that we don't want to fight battles that we can't win. So we're going to draw a little bit on Sun Tzu. And if you look at sort of the goal of addiction psychiatry, it is about setting up the field of battle to beat the addiction. So it is about reducing our cravings, shaping our environment, because the last thing that we want to do is fight a battle and lose, because then our brain will sort of bludgeon us with stronger cravings. So what we really want to do is try to pick battles that we are going to win and really build up those successes and confidence. Because there's one other really insidious thing that happens when we fight a craving and we fail. Over time, what do we learn from doing this? Not only does our brain learn to intensify the cravings, but we learn that we are powerless.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you just want to prevent the craving to get strong enough, because then you're at the point of no return. If you let the craving or the temptation get enough, you lose. So it's not that you can't resist, because if you just get triggered a little bit, of course you can resist. You prevent it from getting to the point of no return. So that's what he's saying. If you let yourself get triggered to a certain extent and then you try to resist, you're just going to prove that you failed. You cannot resist after a certain point. So let's say your point of no return might be even just like indulging in scrolling Instagram and looking at like booties or like fitness models for like 10 seconds. That might be the point of no return for you. For some people, they might be able to look at that and just be like, whatever. You know, it doesn't trigger them so much that they can't resist anymore. So for me, talking about the point of no return and every single person's different threshold for that point of no return is vital, because everybody can resist a little bit. If you see one photo, that might trigger you. That might be your point of no return. You might have to seriously isolate yourself from technology for a couple of days just to desensitize yourself and raise your point of no return to where one photo will not trigger you, right? So if you're that triggerable, that one photo just like sets you off and you can't resist, then you're going to have to take a little bit more dopamine detox. You're going to have to get away from the screens, leave your phone at home, take a long time, maybe a couple of days, so that you can actually not get bombarded, because it's everywhere. So I personally don't use Instagram because I know it's there. I only post. I'm not subscribed to things that are promiscuous, so I never get triggered. It's very rare that I even have a temptation. And my level of threshold is pretty high now because I haven't watched it in years. So everyone's different, but I appreciate his approach. Definitely appreciate his approach, but this video is getting long. So long story short, I'm going to wrap this video up right now and say there's a lot of different opinions out there. But if you really look at the neuroscience, like I think I had a Huberman up here. Let's just listen to this for a second.